My good friends over at G Fuel just launched a brand new Twitch-inspired flavor called Sour Pixel Potion. If you guys want to check that out, it's available on the G Fuel website right now, and if you use code ESPRESSO, you'll get 10% off your entire order. So go check it out if you're interested. As we approach Modern Warfare in just under a month's time, it's natural to think about all the history the franchise has had up until this point. How much the words Modern Warfare may mean to the players who are veterans to the franchise at this point, who have been around since the original trilogy. Whether you remember any of the campaign moments like all gillied up, or you remember getting your first nuke or jumping on top of high-rise and MP, or perhaps your favorite memories come from the Spec Ops missions along the way. There's no denying though that this year's upcoming installment is a direct hit on that nostalgia that you no doubt have when it comes to Modern Warfare 1 through 3. But what's fascinating and what many may have no idea about is that Modern Warfare as a franchise almost never existed. Not Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, not Modern Warfare 2, not Modern Warfare 3, and certainly not now, the soft reboot of Modern Warfare. We brushed very close to what may have been an alternate history for the Call of Duty franchise, and today I want to tell that story and paint the picture of how Call of Duty Modern Warfare almost never happened, thus nearly missing the entire scenario in which Call of Duty as we know it may never have gone mainstream and lasted to the point that it has now. If you're interested in seeing more retrospective content like this, drop a like and of course hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things in the Call of Duty world and for more things like this. And of course, with Modern Warfare dropping in just under a month's time, we're going to be ramping up the content and killing it here with that, so if you're interested in any of that, maybe consider it. Anyways, the story of how Modern Warfare almost never was. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare set up perhaps one of the most iconic story arcs of gaming in the late 2000s and the years to follow, and it was the game that sent the franchise skyrocketing towards success. While it may not be the pinnacle of the franchise, with those titles being Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops, nearly doubling the total copies sold, it was instrumental in the game's success no less. Modern Warfare is one of the first titles in the franchise to be heavily marketed and to be considered mainstream. The entire game was meant to be real, visceral as many developers tend to put it, and ripped from the headlines. It was meant to set up a narrative that in 2007 was believable to the point of that could happen at any given moment. That was a key breakaway from what Call of Duty historically up until that point did. Since the original Call of Duty in 2003, Infinity Ward and Treyarch had gone back and forth with their own visions and stories of a World War II narrative, a historically based story in the greatest conflict of human history. The genre was ripe, there were plenty of players at the time, and Call of Duty was a known project, but wasn't anything explosive at that time. It wasn't the talk of the town or a game with a large following comparative to the peaks that we now know of. For reference, the original Call of Duty sold a few tens of thousands of copies. The peak data gathered from Modern Warfare 3 sales, that indicated that it sold over 30,700,000 copies to date. Out of the humble origins, the legend was born, but Modern Warfare was that key. It was the deviant that broke the mold and was just different enough to capture the appeal and interest of players, all while being ahead of its market curve. But here's the curious thing. Modern Warfare almost didn't happen. It was fought tooth and nail and eventually was done, but it was never the intended plans for the fourth installment of the franchise, or, well, more than fourth if you count the expansions, as many often do. The information, though, came out nearly a decade ago, actually just about a week and a half shy of a decade exactly, but it's an overlooked detail tucked away in the massive amount of information that is the Infinity Ward versus Activision lawsuit. That's a whole story for a different day that I'm sure you're at least partially familiar with, in which the original Infinity Ward studio cast went up against Activision for withholding bonuses, which resulted in the split of the studios, co-founders Vince Zampella and Jason West's departure to form Respawn Entertainment, later creating Titanfall 1 and 2 as well as Apex Legends, and a whole swing of the bat around the mill around Infinity Ward and the Call of Duty franchise on that end. In an interview with the official PlayStation magazine, Vince Zampella, before the turmoil of the lawsuit with Activision, spoke about the nature of COD 4 leading up to the release of Modern Warfare 2, just doing his sort of rounds for press leading up to Modern Warfare 2. He told the magazine that the studio had wanted to work with a modern setting for their shooter for years, as well as, at the time, considering a modern setting, wanting to bring their game to console. Talking about the development on Call of Duty and Call of Duty 2. Initially, Infinity Ward didn't even want Call of Duty 2 to be a World War II entry, but instead went along with the push from Activision to gain access to further development on consoles. Zampella said, "We are dead set against it being World War II, but Activision really wanted it. The compromise sort of being that we'd get some dev kits for consoles in exchange for doing a World War II game. We always wanted to be on consoles, and Activision saw us more as a PC developer. In relation to the title of COD 4 a little further, Zampella chimed in on the creative process and the back and forth the studio had with the publisher about the creative direction, where it would go, and what the narrative would be like, saying, Activision also did not want a Modern Warfare. They thought working on a modern game was risky, and oh my god, you can't have that. They were doing market research to show us we were wrong the whole time. We had to fight for everything. Now, consider where the Modern Warfare franchise has brought Call of Duty to date. Kind of crazy to think about that everything up until that point was fought tooth and nail. But imagine that. A Call of Duty that continued on and did World War II again, in an already oversaturated market of the growing World War II titles at the time. I still recall, even as a high school kid, not really too immersed into the Call of Duty world back in the day, that saw plenty of media out there that kept calling the following title of World at War something that had no standout features of its own and really just stuck to the mold. No matter how great that game turned out, and in my personal opinion, it was pretty damn good, it was definitely a setting that didn't need to be done. Modern Warfare pushed out and forged its own path in an industry that at the time was pretty content. The risk was taking the game and pushing a modern narrative, a story that players could relate to and one that could be a little shocking at times. And from that risk came a ton of things. Firstly, from a business perspective, a clear shot showcasing the risk was paid off with a jump to 17 million sales of the game to date, an 11 million unit sale increase compared to just the previous title of Call of Duty 3. Then came the start of one of the most iconic franchises in the gaming world, the Modern Warfare franchise. Beloved by countless for the gameplay and the legendary cast of characters in no particular order, including Captain John Price, Soap, Ghost, Roach, Makarov, Zakhaev, and plenty more to follow. Along with the vast growth of the franchise and love and adoration from fans, came the pinnacle of the Call of Duty years later between Black Ops and Modern Warfare 3. And of course, this year's soft reboot of the Modern Warfare franchise certainly never would have happened if the original Modern Warfare had not over a decade ago. Simply put, Call of Duty would not be where it is today, if even close to where it is today, had it not taken that leap of faith, broken out of that comfort zone of the World War II shooters in the mid-2000s, and had it taken the initially planned route of the safe World War II play, the franchise may very well never have gained that mainstream appeal and popularity, or at least nowhere near where it did. A lot of my own age demographic and above consider games like Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, Black Ops to be those years comparable to this generation's Fortnite. There was no stopping the freight train that was Call of Duty, and it was all set in motion by one executive call to try out a modern military shooter. All because of that one call, we have the vast library of titles and countless memories. We know how the relationship with Infinity Ward and Activision went after that. The coming lawsuit ripped a gash open in the studio and changed the minds of many forever. But the sales of Modern Warfare opened up opportunity for the franchise, the likes of which no one probably ever anticipated. Admittedly, I do often think about those leaps of faith and how Call of Duty never really takes them anymore. They didn't really to begin with, but that single greatest success story of the Call of Duty franchise and its breakout to the mainstream appeal was built on a leap of faith, taking a risk. With the ever-changing and ever-growing landscape of the gaming industry, Call of Duty can survive simply because it's Call of Duty. But imagine if it tried to grow again. Imagine if it broke out of its comfort zone and did something truly ahead of the curve for once again. Without getting too heavy into my own ideas and considerations, because that's not really the main focus of this video, if a studio decided to take that risk and just do whatever, it could work out way better than perhaps treating Call of Duty as a service or staying with what they know works. Modern Warfare at its very base looks to be something that pleases players and of course can maybe even bring back some of the old-time fans, but what about the year after? Maybe that's time for another leap of faith, another jump to take to that risk. Maybe. But anyways, it's crazy to think about how in Modern Warfare Remastered we had that time paradox. We had that separate Easter egg that you could end up killing Makarov in all gillied up instead of Zakhaev or shooting at Zakhaev, in which you ended up in canon completely erasing the events of Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. Of course, in the universe of Modern Warfare, sparing countless hundreds of thousands of lives probably over the coming World War III. But I think it's crazy that we had a brush with an almost real-world time paradox when we consider this. When we consider that Modern Warfare was so close to never happening in the first place. And as a result, well, the rest of that could have been wiped out. We never could have grown up with that franchise exactly how we knew it. And many of us may never have even heard of Call of Duty had it not been for COD 4 Modern Warfare. But anyways, a little fascinating piece of history that has always stuck in the back of my mind, and especially with the coming Modern Warfare coming up, I always think of how crazy it could have been. That little dance with fate that could have altered everything. So that said, just wanted to share a little bit of trivia with you guys and tell you a story you may never have known about the Call of Duty franchise. So that's where we're going to wrap it up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think it's crazy that this almost never happened? Could you imagine a Call of Duty without Modern Warfare? Whatever it is, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, all things upcoming Modern Warfare content as well. With a launch here in just under a month, I'm super excited for all that. So hit that subscribe button if you guys want to stay up to date with all of it. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's get out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.